Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. Dr. Ethan Marks had always prided himself on his sharp, rational mind. For years, he had poured his energy into neural research, delving into the mysteries of human thought, emotions, and behavior. But as he sat alone in his dimly lit office at the research facility, a chill crept down his spine that he hadn't felt in years. What he had stumbled upon was not a breakthrough in medical science or mental health. It was a horror beyond imagination. His hand hovered over the encrypted folder on his computer, the one marked with the government seal. For days, he had been tracking irregularities in the files he was permitted to access. Something felt wrong, and now with a final click, the last of the hidden files opened up before him. The contents of the documents were sickeningly clear. The Communist Party had developed a new form of chemical compound, one that could alter human emotions, stripping away free will. The drug was designed to keep the people compliant, loyal, and utterly under control. The upcoming election was merely a facade. The drug was already being deployed across New Dawn under the guise of a public health initiative. A chemical tether tying every citizen signed line to the party, says what? Ethan stared at the screen, his pulse pounding in his ears. He leaned back in his chair, the weight of the discovery pressing down on him. They weren't just rigging an election, they were obliterating the very concept of free will. The question wasn't true if they would win the election. It was whether the people would ever know they lost their ability to choose. His mind raced. If the people remained unaware, they'd devote, as if they were making a choice, but their emotions, their very inclinations, would be dictated by the party. Ethan had once believed in the party's promises of stability and order, but this was tyranny on a scale he hadn't thought possible. Panic clawed at him, but he quickly pushed it down. He was no idealist, no revolutionary, but something had to be done. The question was, how? As he clicked through the files, trying to piece together the full scope of the operation, a name popped up that he hadn't expected. Lana Carter, the opposition candidate. She was gaining ground in the polls, despite the party's overwhelming control. Young, charismatic, with a vision of a free society, she represented everything the party despised. That's why they would never let her win. But now Ethan understood they didn't even need to steal the election. They were rigging mine. Could she be the one to stop this? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden beeping from his personal phone. Gaps. Number flashed on the screen. Gabe Turner. His childhood friend was a tech expert who had warned him about the party. Its growing influence. Ethan swiped the call. Ethan, you okay, man? Gabe's voice crackled over the line, carrying a familiar edge of concern. You've been off the grid for days. I found something, Gabe. Something big, and I need your help. A long pause followed. Then Gabe spoke, his tone serious. What are you talking about? Ethan hesitated, then let the words spill out. He told Gabe everything about the drug, about how the party was controlling the election, and how the people's minds were being manipulated. By the time he finished, his hands were trembling. Jesus. Gabe breathed. Are you telling me they were controlling emotions? How many people know about this? As far as I can tell, very few, but if they pull this off, the people won. To even know they were being manipulated. Then we've got to stop them, Gabe said firmly. I've been thinking the same thing, but I can do it alone. Ethan glanced at the screen. I need to reach Lana Carter. She's under tight security. Gabe replied, ever since she got close in the polls, the party has been keeping an eye on her. I don't care if anyone can stop this. It's Santa. 3 nights later, in a dimly lit underground parking lot beneath a disused factory on the outskirts of New Dawn, Ethan found himself face to face with Lana Carter. She was smaller than he expected, but radiated a fierce energy that instantly commanded attention. She wore a simple black coat, her hair tied back in a no-nonsense manner, but her eyes were sharp, constantly scanning the surroundings as though she half expected the party agents to jump out from the shadows at any moment. Dr. Marks, she greeted him with a nod, her voice controlled, but tinged with curiosity. Gabe says, you have something urgent to discuss. I do. Ethan glanced around nervously. Gabe had agreed to stand watch, but the sense of danger still prickled at him. What I am about to tell you can leave this room. It's bigger than your campaign. It's not about the election itself and the party's true plan. Lana crossed her arms, leaning slightly against the hood of a nearby car. I am listening. Ethan took a breath and plunged into the explanation. He told her about the emotion-altering drug, how it was being distributed under the guise of health programs, how it would manipulate voters' emotions to ensure their loyalty to the party. He showed her the files on his tablet, the formulas, the timelines for deployment, the classified communications between government officials. As he spoke, Lana Say's face hardened, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the edge of the car. When? She asked sharply, her voice barely a whisper. They've already started. Ethan says, voice cracked. The full effect will hit right before Election Day. Lana stepped back, pacing for a moment, her mind clearly racing. If this is true, and I believe it is, we're not just talking about an election. We were talking about the end of freedom itself. The people want to even know they were being controlled. That's exactly it. Ethan said, we have to expose this. You have to expose this. Lana stopped pacing and fixed her gaze on him. Ethan, if we go public with this, the party will come for us. They'll come hard. We need more than just a whistleblower. We need undeniable proof. I can get it. Gabe's soft voice interrupted from the shadows as he stepped forward, his expression grim. I can hack into the government servers, pull out whatever files we need to make this public. But it's not going to be easy. Security is tighter than ever. Lana stood silent for a moment, then looked back at Ethan. Are you willing to see this through? Ethan hesitated, fear flickering in his chest, but he nodded. Good, Lana said, her voice firm because from here on out there's no turning back. The next week was a blur of tense planning and sleepless nights. Ethan, Lana, and Gabe worked in secret, gathering every scrap of evidence they could find. Gabe's hacking skills were put to the test as he infiltrated government databases, decrypting files and dodging the party surveillance system. But the closer they got to exposing the truth, the more dangerous the situation became. The party had eyes everywhere, and Ethan felt the weight of their gaze, closing in on him like a tightening noose. Every time he left his apartment, he could feel the oppressive presence of government agents, watching, waiting for him to make a mistake. Then the inevitable happened. Late one night, as they were finalizing plans to broadcast the damning evidence during Lana's upcoming rally, an urgent message flashed across Gabe's screen. They were on to us, Gabe said, his voice tight with urgency. We need to move now. Before Ethan could process what was happening, a loud bang echoed through the warehouse where they had been working. The lights flickered and the door burst open. Several armed men in black tactical gear stormed in, their weapons trained on the trio. Lana grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him toward the back exit. We've got to go. But before they could escape, a figure stepped into their path, a woman in a sleek black coat, her eyes cold and calculating, Agent Rosaline Chen. Dr. Marks, she said calmly, her hand resting on her gun. Lana Carter, you coming with me? Ethan saw his heart pounded in his chest. They were trapped. Ethan saw his heart hammered in his chest as Agent Rosaline Chen's eyes locked onto his. Lana's grip on his arm tightened, her body coiled with tension ready to spring. The party's agents fanned out, blocking every conceivable escape route. The cold sheen of Rosaline's gun caught the dim light as she raised it, her expression unreadable. We don't want this to get messy, Rosaline said, her voice low but commanding. You come quietly and no one gets hurt. Lana shifted subtly, her eyes scanning the room for any opportunity to flee. But it was clear that the only option left was to fight or surrender. Ethan's breath came in shallow bursts, the weight of their situation pressing down on him like a physical force. Gabe, who had been furiously typing on his laptop in the corner, suddenly looked up, eyes wide with realization. The files, we have to upload them. Now he whispered harshly. If we go down, we at least need to take the truth with us. Lana's eyes flipped to Gabe, her decision made in an instant. Do it. Before Rosaline could react, Gabe slammed his hand down on the keyboard, activating the final phase of their plan. The screen blinked, the upload bar filling slowly, painfully. Ethan's pulse quickened as he realized that Gabe was putting everything on the line in that moment. The files, the proof, their very lives. Rosaline's gaze snapped to the laptop, her eyes narrowing. Stop, she shouted, lunging forward, but it was too late. Lana moved like lightning, grabbing a nearby chair and swinging it toward Rosaline. The agent deflected the blow, but the moment of distraction was enough for Ethan to grab Gabe by the arm and yank him toward the side exit. The three of them bolted for the door, the sound of gunfire echoing behind them as the party stand agents opened fire. Bullets ricocheted off the metal walls as they ran, their footsteps pounding against the concrete floor. Rosaline barked orders, but Ethan didn't hear the words. His focus was solely on escape. They burst out into the night air, the cool breeze a shocking contrast to the heat of their frantic dash. The dark alleyways of New Dawn stretched out before them like a labyrinth, and they didn't stop to think as they tore down the narrow street. Their pursuers were close behind, but Gabe had planned their escape route well. A series of twisting alleys and obscure corners allowed them to slip into the shadows, momentarily losing their tail. Ethan's lungs burned as they crouched behind a stack of crates in a dimly lit alley, gasping for breath. Lana leaned against the wall, her face flushed but determined. "How much of the upload got through?" she asked, her voice tight. Gabe wiped the sweat from his brow, still panting. "Enough, the evidence is out there now. The party send the plan ... It's exposed." Ethan closed his eyes briefly, a wave of relief washing over him. They had done it. The truth was out, but that victory was quickly tempered by the reality of their situation. They were still fugitives, and the party would stop at nothing to silence them. "We need to keep moving," Lana said, pushing off the wall and glancing around the alley. "They won to stop until we re-dead or behind bars." Ethan nodded, the adrenaline still pumping through his veins. "Where do we go now?" "I have a safe house," Gabe said quietly. "It's high off the grid, but we don't need to lay low for a while." The three of them slipped deeper into the maze of alleys, careful to stay out of sight. The city seemed to hum with the distant sound of sirens, the party's forces sweeping the streets in search of them. Ethan's mind raced, trying to process the events of the last few hours. They had uncovered the conspiracy, exposed it to the public, but it felt like a hollow victory. The people might now know the truth, but the party still held all the power. Hours later, they arrived at Gabe's safe house, a rundown apartment on the outskirts of the city, buried in a sea of dilapidated buildings. It was far from the high-tech labs and polished political offices they were used to, but it was safe for now. Lana paced the room, her frustration palpable. "We've started something, but it's not enough. The party will do damage control, spin this however they need to. We need more, something that forces them to confront the truth publicly." Gabe sat at his computer, already working on encrypting their communication. "We need to hit them where it hurts," he said without looking up. "Their infrastructure, their systems, if we can cripple their networks, expose more of their secrets, they want to be able to cover it up." Ethan sat on the edge of a worn-out couch, his head in his hand. His entire world had shifted so drastically in such a short time. He had gone from being a scientist, a man dedicated to research and discovery, to a fugitive fighting a battle he had never asked to be part of. "I don't know if I am cut out for this," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. Lana stopped pacing and looked at him, her expression softening for the first time. "None of us are, Ethan, but that doesn't mean we can walk away. Not now, not after what we've seen." Ethan met her gaze, and for a brief moment, he saw the exhaustion beneath her determined exterior. She was fighting for something bigger than herself, and despite the odds, she hadn't given up. He realized then that he couldn't tie whether the fight for freedom was worth any sacrifice. Before he could respond, Gabe's screen lit up with a new message. "We've got a problem," Gabe muttered, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "What is it?" Lana asked, moving to his side. "They've put a bounty on our heads," Gabe replied grimly. "Every mercenary and bounty hunter in the city is going to be looking for us now." Lana swore under her breath. They were getting desperate. Ethan felt a cold chill settle over him. They had expected the party to come after them, but a bounty meant they were running out of time. Every second they spent in the city was a second closer to being caught or killed. "We need to act fast," Lana said, her voice hardening. "We take the fight to them, expose them in a way they can to recover from." Ethan nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The stakes were higher than ever. But he wasn't going to back down, not now. As they made their final preparations, Ethan couldn't help but think about the future. The party had stripped people of their free will, but perhaps the fight wasn't just about exposing a conspiracy. It was about showing the people that freedom wasn't something that could be given or taken away by a government. It was something that had to be fought for, earned, and defended. The next night, they made their move. Gabe's hacking expertise had given them a window of opportunity, a weakness in the party's communications network. It was risky, but they had no choice. They infiltrated a government broadcasting station, intending to hijack the party's own media and air the damning evidence to every screen in the city. The operation was a blur of tension and rapid movements. Ethan's heart pounded as they maneuvered through the station, avoiding guards and security cameras. Gabe worked quickly, breaking into the control room and setting up the broadcast. Just as the final moments of their plan unfolded, a group of armed agents stormed the building. Among them was Rosaline Chen, her face a mask of grim determination. "You can too win this," she said coldly as she leveled her gun at them. "You think the people care about your ideals, they just want order, stability, and we give that to them." Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "You read wrong. People want freedom. They just don't know it yet, but they will." Rosaline's gaze flickered with doubt for the briefest of moments before she steeled herself. She raised her gun, but before she could pull the trigger, Lana moved. In a split second, she disarmed Rosaline, pinning her to the ground. "You fighting for the wrong side," Lana said quietly, her voice filled with conviction. "You still have a choice." Rosaline hesitated, her eyes darting between them and the chaos unfolding around them. The doubt that had been festering inside her finally broke through with a sigh. She lowered her head, her resistance fading. The broadcast went live, every screen in New Dawn lit up with the truth footage of the party, some manipulation, the evidence of the drug, and the voices of those who had been silenced for too long. The people saw it all. As the broadcast reached its climax, Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulder. The truth was out. The people could no longer be kept in the dark. But even as the victory settled over them, Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The fight for freedom wasn't tied over. The party still held power, and the road ahead would be long and dangerous. As they slipped back into the shadows, leaving the broadcasting station behind, Ethan glanced at Lana. She caught his gaze and gave a small, determined nod. The price of freedom was steep, but they were willing to pay it.